Have you ever paused in the middle of making a choice and wondered, is this truly my decision, or am I simply playing out a predetermined script? Perhaps you've pondered this while deliberating over a major life decision, or maybe during a quiet moment of reflection about the paths your life has taken. If these thoughts have crossed your mind, you're engaging with one of humanity's most enduring philosophical puzzles, the paradox of free will and determinism. I'm fascinated by how this question touches every aspect of our lives, from the smallest daily choices to our grandest life decisions, from our legal systems to our deepest spiritual beliefs. Yet despite its importance, many discussions about free will versus determinism quickly become technical philosophical exercises that lose sight of what truly matters to us as thinking, human beings navigating our complex lives. Today, I want to explore this paradox in a way that resonates with real human experience. We'll examine the compelling case for both free will and determinism, investigate where these seemingly opposing views intersect, and consider what this means for how we understand ourselves and our place in the universe. And I promise to address some aspects of this debate that often get overlooked in conventional discussions. Let's begin with what seems obvious to most of us, the experience of making choices. Right now, you could close this video, continue watching, or perhaps pause to make yourself a cup of coffee. The feeling that this decision is entirely yours is powerful and immediate. This intuitive sense that we author our own actions forms the foundation of our concept of free will. When we deliberate between options, weighing pros and cons, and finally arrive at a decision, the experience feels undeniably real. We praise people for making good choices and hold them accountable for harmful ones. Our entire moral and legal framework rests on the assumption that people could have chosen differently than they did. Yet when we examine this experience more closely, complications arise. Consider what influences your decisions: your genetic makeup, your upbringing, your past experiences, cultural conditioning, and even your current physical state. Did you choose any of these factors? The truth is that every choice you make emerges from a complex web of causes and conditions that precede the moment of decision. If we could somehow rewind time to a previous decision point, keeping all factors exactly the same, your brain chemistry, your memories, your desires, everything, would you ever choose differently? This is the compelling logic of determinism, that given identical starting conditions, identical outcomes must follow. Modern neuroscience adds another layer to this discussion. Brain imaging studies reveal that our brains begin preparing for actions before we become consciously aware of deciding to act. Some researchers interpret this to mean that our sense of conscious choice might be more like a story we tell ourselves after our brain has already set events in motion. But does this scientific perspective truly eliminate free will? I don't believe it's that simple. Perhaps what we're discovering is not the absence of free will, but a more nuanced understanding of what freedom actually means in beings like ourselves, conscious creatures embedded in physical bodies that operate according to natural laws. Consider how we develop as individuals. As children, our choices are largely driven by immediate desires and environmental conditioning. As we mature, we develop greater self-awareness and the capacity to reflect on our own thinking. We can recognize patterns in our behavior, question our automatic responses, and gradually cultivate different ways of responding to situations. This development of metacognition, thinking about our thinking, introduces a crucial element of freedom into our mental lives. When I reflect on my own experience, I recognize that freedom doesn't mean making choices independent of all influences. Rather, it means having the capacity to recognize those influences, to deliberate among competing motivations, and to act in alignment with my deeper values rather than merely reacting to immediate circumstances. Before we continue exploring this fascinating intersection of determinism and freedom, I want to take a moment to connect with you directly. If you're finding value in this discussion and appreciate content that explores complex ideas without oversimplification, please consider subscribing to this channel and turning on notifications. Your support makes it possible for me to continue creating thoughtful content on topics that matter. Now, let's return to our exploration. One perspective that offers a way to this paradox is called compatibilism, the view that determinism and a meaningful form of free will can coexist. Compatibilists redefine free will not as freedom from causation, but as freedom from certain kinds of constraints. On this view, you act freely when you act according to your own desires without external coercion, even if those desires themselves are the product of prior causes. To understand this better, consider two scenarios. In the first, you choose to stay home on a Friday night because you genuinely prefer a quiet evening alone. In the second, you stay home because someone has threatened you with harm if you go out. Both cases might be fully determined by prior causes, but only in the first are you acting freely in any meaningful sense. This compatibilist approach preserves what we value most about free will, moral responsibility, dignity, and autonomy, while acknowledging the causal nature of the universe and our place within it. It suggests that freedom isn't about escaping the causal order, but about the quality of our participation in it. There's also a more practical dimension to this philosophical puzzle. How should understanding this paradox affect how we live? Some worry that accepting determinism leads to fatalism. If everything is determined, why bother making an effort to change? But this reaction misunderstands determinism in a crucial way. The choices you make today, including your decision to reflect on these ideas and potentially change your perspective, become part of the causal chain that determines future events. Your deliberations and efforts matter precisely because they are causal factors that influence what happens next. Far from undermining the importance of choice, determinism actually emphasizes why our choices matter so profoundly. Understanding the determined nature of our choices can also foster compassion, both for ourselves and others. When someone behaves in ways we find troubling, recognizing the complex causal web that led to their actions doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does invite us to respond with greater understanding. Similarly, when we struggle with our own limitations, this perspective can help us replace harsh self-judgment with a more compassionate attitude of self-development. This brings us to a rarely discussed aspect of this paradox: how our beliefs about free will affect our behavior. Research suggests that people who believe in free will tend to make more ethical choices and take more responsibility for their actions than those who don't. Yet these studies also reveal that believing everything is predetermined can temporarily reduce people's sense of moral responsibility. This creates an interesting tension. If determinism is true, should we still cultivate a belief in free will for its practical benefits? Or is there greater value in aligning our beliefs with reality, even if that reality is complex and challenges our intuitions? I believe we don't need to choose between these perspectives. We can acknowledge the causal nature of our choices while still recognizing the unique kind of causality that flows through conscious, deliberative beings like ourselves. Our awareness itself becomes a causal force. When you recognize patterns in your behavior that don't serve you well, that very recognition becomes a new causal factor that can alter your future responses. Perhaps the most profound implication of this paradox lies in how it transforms our understanding of human development. If freedom isn't an innate property but a capacity we develop, then the cultivation of greater self-awareness, emotional regulation, and reflective thought becomes central to what it means to become more fully human. Freedom, in the sense, is not something we simply have, but something we achieve through conscious development. As we conclude, I invite you to sit with this paradox rather than rush in to resolve it. The tension between determinism and free will reflects the fascinating complexity of being conscious creatures embedded in a causal universe. There's something profound in recognizing both the ways we are shaped by forces beyond our control and the unique capacity we have to become aware of those forces and participate consciously in our own unfolding. If you found this exploration valuable, please take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm particularly interested to hear how you experience this paradox in your own life. What does freedom mean to you, and how do you reconcile it with your understanding of causality? Also, check the description below for ways to support this channel as we continue exploring ideas that matter. And if you haven't already, subscribe to join our community of thoughtful explorers. Thank you for engaging with these ideas. Until next time, may your awareness become an ever more meaningful part of the causal web that shoots both who you are and who you are becoming.